Hell no, bro.
What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Back with another rant. And the purpose of this is just because, one, I'm an expressive person. I'm passionate. What I believe in, I want that to be heard. And I'm not going to stop. So the reason I started off with the meme that I made is obviously to make a joke, but to make a joke and make light of a situation that is real serious in the sport of boxing. And that's two particular fighters, Keith Thurman and Guillermo Rigondeaux, and I want to talk about that on this video. To me, that's the length that Keith Thurman has to go through in order to land a fight with top welterweights. And I just want to talk about these two fighters in particular and the evolution of boxing. Now, let's start off with Keith Thurman, since I made the meme about him. Keith Thurman is a fighter who is on the incline. He's been winning, and he's been winning impressively. He's undefeated, and I've made and touched on this topic before, but I'm going to continue doing so until I see justice in the sport of boxing. Now, we've evolved as boxing fans and as a sport, in some ways good, in some way bad. The good would be things like boxing. They're talking about making NBC deals and Showtime deals, and Fox Sports shows boxing now. ESPN, etc. So boxing is getting back to the spotlight where it's more mainstream. I have a ton of friends that like sports. They watch football, they watch baseball, they watch basketball primarily, maybe some UFC, and a couple boxing fans, you know what I'm saying? And boxing used to be on primetime television, and it used to be like families would gather around and actually watch boxing. You know what I mean? Boxing used to be really excited, especially when they had American heavyweights, you know what I mean? Who, you know what I mean? White people, black people, Mike Tyson's and the Tommy Morrison's of the world, you know what I mean? This when the heavyweight division was cracking. So things have changed, and again, some for the good, some for the bad. One thing that has changed for the bad is we have fans who almost play the political standpoint, and it's like they're the promoter of the fighter based on how they talk, if that makes any sense. Like these fans nowadays, a lot of them, and I'm not trying to generalize because there's a lot of diehard, dedicated boxing fans. Some of you guys know more than me. Some of you guys know just as much as me. Some of you guys know less. There's different severities, different levels of fans. Some people watching boxing for 6 months, other people for 60 years, you know what I mean? That's the great thing about the sport, tons of knowledge. But some of the fans nowadays, they are so, one, they don't know their history. That's one thing. And then two, the other thing is they play, like I said, they play promoter, and they get caught up in all things that really don't have shit to do with the best fighting the best, and yet they claim it. Like on the grand scale, yeah, Pacquiao and Mayweather should fight. But there's other instances of the best not fighting the best that don't occur in boxing. And it's almost as if they're okay with that. Like they don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? You care only about Pacquiao and Mayweather fighting, or Canelo Cotto or some shit. Those are good fights. I like those fights too. But there's other, on a smaller scale, the same thing is happening. And I think with Keith Thurman, I hear so many fans and people leaving comments like he ain't fought nobody. Like that to me, that's a scapegoat. That's a cop out. If he stepped up and got his opportunity and got his ass whooped, got knocked out, so be it. Me as a fan, I would be happy that he had the opportunity and he did not rise to the occasion. Cool. I have no problems with that. If that's how it unfolds and that was the path, that was the destiny, cool. It is what it is. But you got to look at fights like Nonito Donaire versus Guillermo Rigondeaux. Donaire was expected to win, you know what I mean? Look at Diego Corrales versus Floyd Mayweather. Corrales was expected to win. People were like, Mayweather's a fool for fighting this dude. He's undefeated. His power is crazy. His height is going to bother the short Mayweather. And people were already writing him off. You know what I mean? There's tons of fights like that. Barrera, Pacquiao. I'm pretty sure Barrera was the favorite in that particular fight. And the list goes on and on and on. And things happen, things change, and these guys rose to the occasion when they were given their test. Now, I'm not saying Keith Thurman will do that, but what I am saying is, as a fan, we haven't been privy to see him fight those types of fighters that would catapult him into the next category in terms of more of a household name, if you will. You know what I'm saying? His best win to me is Diego Chavez. Diego Chavez was banging. He had a good game plan. He caused Thurman to adjust, but that was his best. You know what I mean? He was an undefeated fighter. He was Paulie Malignaggi's mandatory. That was probably his best win. Jesus Soto Caras, guys like that, those guys are, to me, gatekeepers. Even though he beat Andre Berto, it was still a dangerous, you know what I mean, dangerous fighter because it's a veteran. And like I said, he was coming off the Berto stoppage. But let us see that. You know what I mean? Again, we get fans who they talk about numbers and stuff like, oh, Keith Thurman versus Amir Khan ain't gonna do 1.4 million. Like, who gives a fuck? Are you fucking Keith Thurman's manager? You know what I'm saying? Like, do you represent one time? It's a good fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, when they announced Lamont Peterson versus Amir Khan at the time, I had no complaints. Lamont Peterson had been looking good in fights. He had Victor Ortiz fights under his resume. He had solid fights under his resume. You know what I mean? I thought it was a good fight. I didn't say, oh, it's going to do this and that, and the numbers ain't going to be all that. It was a good fight. Let it happen. And that's what we're getting with guys like Keith Thurman. Now, let's talk about Rigondeaux. Rigondeaux, same thing. Rigondeaux is a little bit worse, though, because his situation is he has already had his step up, and that was Nonito Donaire. That was his big step up in like 11, 12 fights. He fought Donaire, embarrassed him, and all of a sudden, he's blackballed, and people act like, oh, he's just too boring for me to represent or for me to promote. That's some bullshit. Like, fuck boring, fuck all that. Like, you look at other sports, and nobody does that. The Patriots just blew out the team yesterday, and nobody. Tom Brady, he's not a scrambler. He's not Russell Wilson or Kaepernick or Cam Newton or RG3 or one of these young guys who are just, you know what I mean, like they have an arm, but they're also athletic and they're gonna run and dodge defenders and stuff like that. Tom Brady, guys like Tom Brady, guys like Peyton Manning, they're more traditional quarterbacks. They have a hell of an arm. They're accurate. They get the ball from point A to B, and they can read defenses, things like that. Now, in that sport, since it's a team sport and not just one person, you don't hear people complain. Like, I've never heard someone say, you know what, my team is the Raiders, and I don't want to see them play the Patriots because the Patriots are undefeated and Tom Brady's he's boring. That motherfucker boring. All he does is throw the ball. He's boring. They don't have no run game. He's boring. Nobody does that. But in boxing, they do that. Rigondeaux, undefeated. Rigondeaux looked good against Donaire. He made Egbeko like gun shy, and for being too skilled and quote unquote boring and running or whatever, you don't want to see other fights. Leo Santa Cruz absolutely should be fighting Rigondeaux. And trust me, I keep it real. You know what I'm saying? I have connects with the Santa Cruz camp. I wish them the best, but I'm honest. That's a fight that needs to happen. And I would love to happen. Not only for Rigondeaux's sake, for Leo Santa Cruz. I mean, you're a young, strong champion. We seen what happened in the Donaire fight. If Leo Santa Cruz finds a way to get it done and beat Rigondeaux, to me, he's moved up a ton of notches. You know what I mean? Fighting guys like Eric Morale, that was a solid win. He was tattooing Morale's body. He looked good in that fight. But that was a guy who was no longer a champion. That was a guy who had already taken losses, etc. So it's cool, but it doesn't just move you drastically. You know what I mean? If you beat the dude that beat the dude, then you kind of inherit his power. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't think right now, but there's some movies where that basically happens. Like they would steal your soul and you inherit their powers or some shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how to describe it right now, but point being is a Santa Cruz win over Rigondeaux would catapult him into bigger paydays, bigger paychecks, and bigger notoriety, and move him up, in my opinion, on the pound for pound list. I'm not saying he's top 10 or whatever, but arguably, you know what I mean? If you beat Rigondeaux, then you're something like the man. And you got guys like Chris Avalos pulling out of the fight. It's just, man, like, Who's gonna step up? Frampton, Quigg, like who's gonna step up and face Rigondeaux? I'm sick of the excuses. I'm sick of people saying, "Oh, Keith Thurman." Like, okay, and the crazy thing is this: Keith Thurman and Rigondeaux almost get the same type of treatment, and they are complete polar opposites stylistically. So if you make an excuse for one, then it doesn't matter because it does not apply to the other ones. Like, okay, hypothetically, using what some of the fans say, Rigondeaux is boring. He doesn't have an entertaining style. Therefore, he doesn't get fights. He's not marketable, right? So I'm hypothetically playing a casual fan who says things like that. Cool. Let's say I agree with that. Oh, Rigondeaux, he's fucking boring. His style is fucked up and boring, right? If that is your reasoning for not seeing Rigondeaux in premier prime fights, there's no way you could use that same argument for Keith Thurman, because Keith Thurman is more marketable. You know what I mean? He speaks English, and we're talking about fighting in the States. He's clean cut. He has good interviews where he's calling out people. He has power. He has an entertaining style. I've seen him take a couple punches and then respond back. Jesus Soto Caras, Diego Chavez fight, and he's undefeated. So there's really no excuse, and that's what I'm saying. Some of these fans are so fickle where they want to have it both ways. You want to bash Rigondeaux, and you also want to bash Keith Thurman. Oh, Keith Thurman ain't did anything. He hasn't proven anything. So using that same logic that I'm just telling you guys, okay, let's say Keith Thurman, you're right. He ain't fought nobody. Who the fuck? Why should he get an Amir Khan fight? Why should he fight Kell Brook? Why should he fight Mayweather Pacquiao? Why should he get any of these big fights? Because he hasn't fought nobody. You can't say that for Rigondeaux. You know what I mean? You can't say Rigondeaux ain't fought nobody because he beat Nonito Donaire, who was undefeated for 11 years with only one loss, and that was early in his career. And Donaire was like stretching fools and like starching people, knocking people out. And Donaire was bigger than Rigondeaux, both in terms of fame and also bigger in terms of physical size. So it doesn't make sense. You're like, oh, Keith Thurman ain't fought nobody. Okay, well, Rigondeaux has. Like, Becco's a solid name. Nonito Donaire, solid name. And Coquette Jim, like these are solid names for his division, and he still can't get a fight. So either way, what some of the fans are saying doesn't add up, because two fighters on polar opposites of the spectrum get the same treatment in the sport of boxing. Kind of like Unbreakable. You got Bruce Willis and you got Mr. fucking Glass, and they're both getting treated the exact same way in the sport of boxing. I don't agree with that. I don't condone that. Like I said, give Keith Thurman his step up. If he gets knocked out and iced, it is what it is. I'll be like, okay, cool. You know what I mean? You can say the hype he was hyped or whatever you guys say after people take one loss. But I want to see it. Let me see it. Let me, as a fan, see that. If Rigondeaux is boring, then it's up to guys like Leo Santa Cruz, Frampton. Frampton just had a exciting rematch. Let's see him fight and bring the best out of Rigondeaux and force Rigondeaux into a brawl or a gunfight and knock him out. You know what I'm saying? If that's what it is, let's see it. You know what I mean? Like with boxing, especially with the boring shit, if you are so inclined, like I would say one of my favorite people right now in general, but especially for this attribute, is Triple G. I love watching Triple G. It's money. I agree he hasn't fought everybody or whatever, but there's not a lot of people hopping in line to fight him. However, one thing that I really like about him, he knows how to cut off the ring. He cuts off the ring. So if you're trying to be squirrely like Daniel Gill normally is and herky jerky, that shit didn't work. You've seen it didn't work. You know what I mean? Matthew Macklin, someone with veteran experience, he cuts the ring off. He's like, no, you're fighting this fight. You're going to deal with this power. You're going to get this work. The end. So if you're skilled enough, make Rigondeaux do the same thing. Cut the ring off on Rigondeaux. You say he has a suspect chin. Expose that. You know what I'm saying? And honestly, if there was a guy who had what Triple G has, that power and that skill set and that mind and that ability in Rigondeaux's weight class, then that would be a hell of a fight. But a lot of people realize how skilled Rigondeaux is and know there's not many people that could potentially exploit in Rigondeaux's division his weaknesses. You know what I mean? Because they got to deal with his counterpunching, they got to deal with his speed, they got to deal with his brain, etc. So therefore, they chalk it up as a loss and say, "Oh, he's boring." You know what I mean? I don't agree with that. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like my video. As always, hate, comment, or subscribe. Till next video is Ego signing off.